What could turn a wedding that ended with applause into an investigation that left experienced detectives questioning every promise made that day? Washington, USA. The ceremony had ended only hours earlier. Hundreds of photographs captured smiling faces. Family members hugged each other. Friends toasted the future. Yet by the end of that same day, one quiet decision would unravel everything those photographs seemed to prove. No one at the wedding noticed the moment that mattered most. It wasn't the vows. It wasn't the first dance. It wasn't the cake. The clue that would later dominate the investigation appeared for only a few seconds, surrounded by applause, and almost everyone looked somewhere else. By the time detectives recognized its importance, the newlyweds' perfect beginning had already become the center of a criminal investigation. Stay with me, because the smallest moment from this wedding would eventually explain why nothing about that day was what it appeared to be. Bride, Alexis Harper, age 30. Alexis Harper believed she was stepping into the happiest chapter of her life. She wasn't the loudest person in any room. She had a gentle habit of making other people feel important before thinking about herself. Children at the rehabilitation clinic where she worked loved her because she never rushed them through difficult moments. Her family admired her because she never stopped showing up when someone needed help. Even during the busiest weeks leading to the wedding, she still called her older sister Jennifer every Sunday afternoon. Some conversations lasted 5 minutes. Others stretched close to an hour. Jennifer would later tell investigators those calls never ended without Alexis laughing. That laughter became difficult to remember after everything changed. Groom, Wyatt Bennett. Wyatt Bennett appeared to be exactly the kind of husband everyone hoped their daughter would marry. Successful. Soft-spoken. Patient. He rarely raised his voice. He remembered birthdays. He listened more than he spoke. Guests described the couple as calm together. Comfortable together. Certain about their future. Looking back, many admitted they had mistaken quiet confidence for certainty. Those two things are not always the same. The wedding took place at a vineyard outside Spokane, Washington, surrounded by rolling hills and rows of summer vines stretching toward the horizon. Morning sunlight settled across the property. Guests chatted beneath white floral arrangements. Children chased one another across the grass while musicians rehearsed nearby. Nothing about the setting suggested that investigators would soon preserve parts of it as evidence. Alexis wore only 2 personal keepsakes that day. Her grandmother's silver locket rested against her neck. Inside was a tiny photograph that had faded with time. Her grandmother had once told her, "Families aren't measured by perfect days. They're measured by what survives difficult ones." Alexis carried those words into every important milestone. She touched the locket just before walking down the aisle. Morgan Ellis, the wedding photographer, unknowingly captured that quiet moment. Months later, detectives would study that photograph far longer than anyone expected. Not because of the bride. Because of someone standing behind her. One photograph changed everything. The ceremony unfolded exactly as guests remembered. The vows felt sincere. The applause echoed across the vineyard. People cried. People smiled. Nothing appeared forced. Nothing appeared rehearsed. And yet, when detectives eventually interviewed dozens of guests, one strange pattern emerged. Almost everyone remembered the emotions. Almost no one remembered the same sequence of events. Memory itself seemed to fracture around one brief period during the reception. Rebecca Sloan, the lead detective, would later describe that inconsistency as the first crack in an otherwise perfect story. The celebration continued through the afternoon. Alexis moved from table to table thanking every guest personally. She hugged relatives she hadn't seen in years. She knelt beside children for photographs. She insisted the kitchen staff take leftovers home instead of throwing them away. Those tiny moments explained who she really was far better than any speech delivered that afternoon. She wasn't performing kindness. She lived it, which made what followed feel impossible to everyone who knew her. But one detail didn't add up. Near the end of the reception, Morgan lifted his camera to capture another candid photograph. Instead of focusing on the couple, his lens briefly framed the guests watching them. It happened in less than 2 seconds. No one reacted. No one pointed. No one interrupted the celebration. The image disappeared among thousands of others stored on memory cards. Weeks later, that overlooked frame would force investigators to completely rethink where the case truly began. As the afternoon faded, Alexis hugged Jennifer one last time before leaving. Jennifer smiled and reminded her not to forget Sunday phone calls just because she was married now. Alexis laughed. "I wouldn't dare." Neither sister realized those ordinary words would become one of Jennifer's final memories of her voice. Guests waved as the newlyweds drove away. The vineyard slowly emptied. Workers folded chairs. Florists packed decorations. The music stopped. To everyone there, it looked like the perfect ending to a beautiful wedding. Investigators would eventually reach a very different conclusion. Because before the sun disappeared that evening, someone had already made a decision that transformed a celebration into a case that would haunt Washington for years. 6 hours later, what detectives found next would make them question every smiling face captured at the wedding. The celebration was over. Guests had returned home believing they had witnessed the beginning of a lifelong marriage. At 7:42 p.m., that belief shattered. A frantic 911 call brought deputies to the couple's rental cottage outside Spokane. There were no signs of forced entry. No overturned furniture. No obvious struggle. Everything inside looked almost untouched. Except for one detail. Alexis' grandmother's silver locket was resting alone on the kitchen table. She never took it off. Not at work. Not while traveling. Not even on her wedding day. Detective Rebecca Sloan stood silently in front of it. "People leave behind things," she said quietly. But not the one thing that meant the most to them. Outside, tire tracks disappeared into the gravel before investigators could determine exactly how many vehicles had entered the property. Neighbors remembered hearing a car. None could agree on its color. Inside the cottage, Wyatt's account seemed calm. Too calm. Every answer fit the timeline. Every detail sounded reasonable. Yet Rebecca couldn't ignore one feeling. She wasn't listening for what Wyatt said. She was listening for what he never mentioned. Main question. If this was simply a tragic disappearance, why had the one object Alexis treasured most been left behind? Detectives collected thousands of wedding photographs, hoping one forgotten frame could explain what happened after the celebration. Most captured exactly what everyone remembered. Smiles. Laughter. Tears of joy. Then Morgan, the wedding photographer, stopped scrolling. One photograph refused to make sense. Alexis was smiling at a guest. Behind her, Wyatt wasn't looking at his bride. He was staring past the crowd at someone standing near the vineyard gate. The expression on his face wasn't happiness. It was recognition. Rebecca enlarged the image again and again. The mysterious figure's face was blocked. But one detail remained perfectly clear. They were wearing the same distinctive shoes later seen in a nearby security camera recording. That single photograph changed the investigation overnight. Detectives were no longer asking only what happened after the wedding. They were asking, who arrived before the nightmare even began? Rebecca asked Wyatt to walk through the wedding day one more time. This time, she didn't interrupt. She simply listened. His timeline sounded polished. Too polished. Then she compared it with phone records and security footage. A quiet gap appeared. Just 18 minutes. It wasn't long. But Wyatt couldn't explain where those minutes had gone. Meanwhile, forensic analysts examined Alexis' phone. She hadn't made a call. She hadn't sent a message. But one notification had been opened and immediately dismissed. The sender's name had already been deleted. Rebecca leaned back in her chair. Someone hadn't just hidden evidence. Someone had carefully decided which evidence investigators were supposed to find. The wedding was no longer a mystery. The real mystery was who had been quietly controlling the story from the very beginning. The breakthrough didn't come from a confession. It came from a receipt. Tucked inside a wedding gift bag, investigators found a receipt from a gas station just a few miles from the vineyard. The timestamp matched the 18 missing minutes in Wyatt's timeline. But Wyatt hadn't used the card. Someone else had. Security footage revealed a familiar face. It wasn't a stranger. It was someone every guest had greeted with a smile. Someone who had blended into the celebration so naturally that no one remembered exactly when they left. Rebecca felt the case shift beneath her. The wedding hadn't been interrupted by an outsider. Whoever shattered Alexis' future had already been invited inside it. One question remained. If this person had planned to disappear unnoticed, why leave behind the one receipt that could lead detectives straight to them? The answer wasn't buried in fingerprints. It was hidden in the timing. Jasmine reconstructed deleted location data from multiple phones. Every device followed the expected route after the wedding, except one. For exactly 18 minutes, it traveled in the opposite direction before returning as if nothing had happened. Rebecca laid the wedding photograph beside the digital map. For the first time, the evidence matched perfectly. The person standing near the vineyard gate wasn't waiting by chance. They were meeting someone. That meeting lasted less than 20 minutes. It changed everything that followed. Rebecca looked at Alexis' silver locket resting in the evidence bag. It never pointed to the victim, she whispered. It pointed to a lie. Now detectives knew who had hidden the truth. The only question left was, why would someone destroy a marriage before it had even lasted a single day? The investigation revealed a painful truth. The wedding had never been the motive. It had been the deadline. The person responsible believed one final act could erase years of deception before a new life began. Instead, every hidden decision left behind another piece of evidence. The forgotten receipt. The unexplained 18 minutes. The overlooked wedding photograph. And the silver locket Alexis never willingly removed. Together, they told a story no lie could survive. Justice. An arrest followed. The evidence held. A jury returned a guilty verdict. For Alexis' family, the sentence brought accountability, but not the future that had been taken from her. Jennifer later placed the silver locket beside Alexis' photograph. This time, her grandmother's words carried a different meaning. Families aren't measured by perfect days. They're measured by what survives difficult ones. Those words no longer spoke about a wedding. They spoke about the strength to keep living after unimaginable loss. Never forget Alexis Harper. Justice cannot rewrite the past, but it can ensure the truth is never buried. If this story moved you, subscribe to The Veil of Secret for more deeply researched true crime stories that honor victims, uncover hidden truths, and remind us that even the smallest clue can speak for those who no longer can.